actually touched them and thrilled them, and they're part of my brand portfolio now. Whatever Tesco does, whatever Coke does, forget it. I'm dealing directly with them. They can't get in the way of that. Tesco guys came up to us one day. It happened about 6 years ago now, so I've been out for you about 6 years ago. And we were doing really well, and the sales rep that called on him came in one day and talked to the sales director, and they talked to me. We're a small company, so we all get together. He said, hey, we got a problem. These guys want a higher margin. And I said, well, you know what to tell them. And I said, just tell them to raise their price. You know, then they get a higher margin. And he said, well, they can't do that because they, you know, and I said, fine, well, then just keep plodding along. And came by another month later and said, we got a real problem. They just delisted one of our packages, a 12-pack. He said, what do we do? I said, raise the price. He said, what? Raise the price? I said, yeah, about 2 years ago. You weren't here then. About 2 years ago, we gave them an extra 25p per case so that they would keep us in stock and stock all our SKUs. They just broke that part of the contract. Raise the price. He said, don't. I said, raise the price. You want me to go do it? Yeah, fine. So they stopped ordering. What a surprise. They were going to teach us a lesson. So about a month goes by. All of a sudden, we're getting lots of calls from the supermarkets, particularly the city center stores and whatnot, where they sold a lot of Red Bull, and it was important to that guy, that manager of that store, because it came out of his pocket. He's profit sharing, and we were one of the big movers at a high level, at a high price. So, you know, the pressure was on. I said, you know, he says, what do I do? I said, keep contacting the guy every week. You did? All of a sudden, I got an invitation to go see the buyer. And the buyer's a 26-year-old kid that, you know, runs a universe and all that stuff. We're gonna meet off campus in the pub, so nobody knows. Yeah, great. So we sit there, and he explains to me what Tesco can do and how big it is and all that kind of stuff. And I said to him, look, you know, you're no different than Mr. and Mrs. Patel. You just bigger, you got more of them. You're a retailer. You know, you buy stuff from me and you put it on the shelf. And I contact with the consumer, and that's what makes it off. So I don't get this. He said, well, Terry Leahy in October last year, this is March or so, he says, October last year, Terry went to the city, and he told them we're going to have a 35% margin. And that's why we're doing this, Harry. And you can really help. And I said, you know, if you would have told me that back in October, if you would have told me that, I would have told him to piss off then. And then he wouldn't have lied to the city and gotten himself in all this trouble. So I mean, I said, you know, this is not my problem. You're 5% of my business, and 90% of my problem. And if you don't want the product, don't worry about it. I got plenty of other places and shelves to sell from. About 3 weeks later, they sent in a board director who pretty much reiterated the same thing. And I just said, look, I'm tired of you guys. You know, either you want to buy the product or not. You're coming to me now. You came to me 3 times. My product's available for sale. The following week, they started ordering. It cost me £1 million in lost margin. And it was the best single thing that we did as a company to stand up and say who we are, because we knew the consumer. We knew the guy that was buying our product. They didn't. And we knew he'd continue to buy our product. It cost me £1 million, but what it did for the organization gave them so much pride. I mean, you know, we stood up. We didn't back down. And we maintained our price level, and it still is today. Yeah, it still costs 6 times more than Coca-Cola per ounce. So, good.
Look, there's a great learning point there, which is you start a digital business here in the Northeast, you have success, you are good. You start coming up against the big players who hardball you. That's when you need good quality grown-ups, quite honest. People that have been around the block a few times, that know when to stand up, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. I think Kenny Rogers could have helped you with that with some of the camera. But that is exactly the point. Deal making is a very specific skill in itself. You see the great deal makers like Rupert Murdoch or Donald Trump. It's got to be a win-win, but you do have to stand up to it. And again, as you grow your company, we talk about this a lot in our books, there is a time to get professionals in, good mentors, good people who know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And finally, talk a little bit about your broadband computer.
Well, this is really silly, but it actually sits right where my love for the consumer is. And the 3 guys that got together to do it, Andy, myself, and Andrew, a filmmaker, a music impresario, and a marketing gig. And we all had trouble with computers. We didn't grow up in that generation. It wasn't second nature to us. And we always wondered why I turn on a computer and there's this thing that says fatal error. Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, I used to work for a living in a place where they shot at me every day, and that didn't bother me. You know, I'd make presentations in the boardroom and whatnot and possibly get fired every day. It didn't bother me. But fatal error, Jesus, I don't know which word to push or where I call somebody. Don't worry about it. push this, buy. And I just get tired of it. You know, why shouldn't a computer be like a refrigerator or a television? Or like we named our first computer, which will be coming out in July, Alex. We named it after Alexander Graham Bell. Why? Alexander Graham Bell happened to be in 1878 in New York, addressing a bunch of financiers who asked him questions about his business, and they said, Mr. Bell, to what do you ascribe the phenomenal success of your product? And he said, because it takes absolutely no skill on the part of the user to operate. And that's what we're going to do for computers.
Excellent. Well, if you've got 6 more characters in your Twitter thing to do, write the word thrill, because that's what I get from Harry. I mean, sort of was a fight about that's thrill, isn't it? And then the thrill of doing Bud Light, and the thrill of doing Red Bull, the thrill of corrupting the nation's youth, that he did very successfully, and the thrill of doing a new broadband computer. Ladies and gentlemen, Harry Drnec!
I just wanted a quick follow-up question because Harry, in our conversation, and yesterday in the social media class, which obviously you wouldn't have seen, there was a lot of obviously discussion in social media about things like Twitter and Facebook and these sorts of internet-based services. We had Dan Lyons speak, the writer for Newsweek, the tech columnist for Newsweek magazine right now, and he basically just kind of popped the balloon in the big Twitter internet party that we were having there, and saying basically, I mean, he was being playing devil's advocate, but basically just saying these things are just on borrowed time. I mean, they're never going to make any money. I mean, Twitter doesn't make any money, and no one's talking about anything abysmal. Now, obviously, there's a debate as to whether they've got some master plan. So, I mean, obviously, you talk a lot about pricing, basically believing in your product and believing in price. Obviously, your story about Tesla is a real David and Goliath story about believing in your product, believing in knowing your market. So, given the fact that there's a big trend, so in this conference, we had a number of people say, "Why don't you stream this thing for free?" Right? And people are writing books about giving everything away for free, and that's it. And there's a big, obviously, there's open source, and in the tech community, free is a big theme, yeah, and not just in the tech community, but in other communities as well. So any thoughts about this all this sort of trend towards free everything? And I realize a lot of it's contextual, but just any thoughts about pricing and
well, I think it's rather not about pricing, and that's such a broad statement. You're absolutely right. There is a real move to it, but you need a good business model. Wherever you do, where is the money? Because if you're going to have people working for you, they want to get paid, and they don't want to get paid in number of hits on your site. It doesn't do anything for them. So. I can't speak for each one of these technologies, but they do get a life of their own. I can remember back when people said, that Amazon will never make it.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys will never turn a profit. They're, the company's worth £4 billion or whatever it is in the stock market. It'll never turn a profit. Well, look at it now. These things change, and if you're trying to reach a consumer and get to a consumer to get them to play with you every day, and then turn around and say that, well, nobody seems to have done this yet, of turning around and say, well, it's going to cost you 10 pence to get in next week, or whatever it may be. Will you retain every customer? No. But how many will you retain, et cetera? I don't know. And I think this advertising, look at Google. I mean, Google is an advertising medium. That's what it is. I mean, they've used technology to get there to build things that people want to do. They've got a great relationship with the consumer because they provide them with this and this, and the advertising that goes along with it is great. So how do you advertise on Twitter is one of the questions.
Yeah.
Pass.
Yeah.
Don't know. These things will come and go. There will be something better than Twitter. We'll be, as you say, we'll have microchips at some point in time. We'll be thinking, I'll think her. All of a sudden, you're a little bit, but who knows? But free, I don't like free.